Dylan Garinger, final project for ethics, and I chose the topic of law enforcement reform. Start with the reason why things would need to change, which is the Supreme Court case of the town of Castle Rock versus Gonzalez, in which a woman had a protective order on her estranged husband to stay away from her and her children. He picked them up without her notice and took them to an amusement park. She called the police multiple times. They did not respond, and when he did show up, the police shot him dead and found the two girls dead in the vehicle. Miss Gonzalez tried to sue the town of Castle Rock, and the Supreme Court decided in a 7-2 decision that both the town and police cannot be sued for failing to uphold a protective order, which officially destroyed the utilization of any sort of protective order in an effective way. Further, there's been growing case law precedents, in the most recent in 2018, of Douglas High School students versus the Brownwood School Board and the Brownwood Sheriff's Department, and that law enforcement does not have a duty to protect and serve the citizens, but that they are to protect property and uphold the law. Currently, there's little transparency and accountability when it comes to law enforcement, made worse when the civil legal system is removed as an option of recourse for people that are let down by it. If you take a look at Damascus, Arkansas, they were caught with speed traps and abuse of power to produce revenue, and they were punished, and the legislation had to be changed in Arkansas to try to limit these speed traps that people cannot trust. Further, the fatal shootings by police just this year are at a number of 987 already. And these deaths were a catalyst of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor that instigated protests by Black Lives Matter to bring those officers to bear and to charge them and arrest them for misconduct. What should we do about this is a very difficult question, because this system was difficult to produce in the first place, and then how do you change something that's been in place for over 200 years? Well, the first step I would take is automated enforcement of traffic monitoring with speed cameras and red light cameras. All of the studies from the CDC statistics and from national representative surveys suggest that these systems reduce accidents and reduce the amount of tickets that are given to citizens. Now, when I read George Orwell's 1984 as an adolescent, I never would have believed I would be a person advocating for automated enforcement. But looking at the stats and looking at the surveys, the system appears to be equitable, and it appears to be fair, which is a major issue of why the people who are upset with the law enforcement system are upset with the law enforcement system. The next step would be to decriminalize drugs nationally. The way that we've attacked drugs is obtuse to solving the problem and is a waste of money and effort. If we focused on manufacturers, pill mills, and importers to stop drugs at the source, we wouldn't have to spend the money and time on traffic stops and frisks that tend to be biased socioeconomically based on any study that has followed them. The next thing to do would be to legalize sex work and to regulate it. This takes one crime off the table and an entire division of vice units in police departments, but it also is safer for the people involved and prevents a plethora of other crimes like sex trafficking, assault, and homicide. The fourth step would be to specialize the police force with specific incident response units. Partner one traditional officer with a new version of a social worker specialized in psychological and addiction performance. The fifth step would be to go to the Senate and stamp down with a constitutional amendment that law enforcement has a duty to protect and serve its citizens and is not only focused on protecting property and upholding the law. And the sixth step would be a constant commitment to transparency, accountability, constant analysis, and improvement. Now, the success condition of these steps would undoubtedly and extensively reform law enforcement. But whether or not they are the optimal solution is a much more difficult question to answer. Is number one optimal? Automated enforcement would remove bias from traffic monitoring, which is a major place where we have seen the shootings that have happened and any other problem that people have had with the non-transparency of speed traps and the disproportionate power that police have to issue fines and to pursue fines. I believe this is the optimal solution because this solution blames no one. It just replaces it with a system that is non-biased. Number two is the optimal solution because the war on drugs has proven to be ineffective and meaningless. It often focuses on catching and punishing users and addicts rather than dealers and distributors. Pill mills are a menace to American society, and the criminals are doctors that look nothing like the story they tell you of drug dealers. The third step is the optimal solution because this is an entire group of people's profession and health that is at risk, and sex workers are American citizens too. It's the oldest profession, and it will likely be the last profession. This is optimal because it helps prevent many other crimes and eliminate a division within vice units while providing safety and legitimizing a profession. Number four is optimal because not every police call is the same, and each requires its own special nuance that the responder's expertise and training should reflect. Number five is explicitly necessary, and such an act would immediately alleviate public animosity and reverse public perception of law enforcement. The fact that the Supreme Court has decided on multiple occasions that they do not have a duty to protect and serve us begs the question of why do we pay them to do this job? And if that's the current relationship, it's no wonder why people are upset. Number six is the absolute most optimal and the most necessary and crucial to all of the other steps, because a commitment to transparency, accountability, and improvement and change will mean that this system is always trying to be the best system it can be, and that it will face any criticism and problem head on. Do the ends justify the means? The major end that is negative is the displacement of workers that my steps would change. There would be people displaced because the force would be reduced with automated enforcement. It would be reduced with the decriminalization of drugs. It would be reduced with the legalization of sex work, and replaced, in some cases, with different kinds of employees. Where do those people go? Some of them would have the option of National Guard or the military, but that is not an endless source of employment. And they have a specific set of skills that then transfers to private security or becoming trained in something different. Unfortunately, the system we've had doesn't work, and automated technology is changing a lot of jobs, and it will redefine the way that America and globalization works in general. It's something we're going to have to face in every occupation, in every avenue, and perhaps this is the best one to face it full on in a full nationwide implementation. Now, these problems have to be dealt with. There's a group of people so upset that they are protesting in the streets, and there's an entire profession of people that feel attacked when they are trying to do a job to serve their community. If we do nothing, then the system remains the same, or the problems that are ignored and the people that are ignored will continue to escalate. And we don't know where that goes, just as much as we don't know what these solutions look like in the end. If we take a close look at the Nixon administration, we can see that they made many mistakes during the civil rights movement and how they approached those groups. And then if we look at the protests of the civil rights movement, There's a group called the Weatherman Underground that acted like complete buffoons and were thought of as idiots for the bombs that they made and the things they did that seemed to be pointless and were done by a bunch of rich white students who had no idea what civil rights meant. This is not something we want to face in 2020. The completion condition. The main tool to complete this is money. Money is something we have in different places and can be moved around to solve this problem. But the next major thing for this to be even something that can be discussed is the ability to discuss things like change in law enforcement and other things that we are used to and comfortable to seeing in a certain way. This is difficult. Most people don't want change, and most people are afraid of change, especially when it may involve their safety. But the fact is, we could make it happen if we wanted to. It just may be impossible.